Rockeyez would like to welcome Frank White. Hey, Frank, man, what's up? Long time.
Hey, buddy. Good to hear from you again.
Good, good. Tell me a little bit about a book, Life in Visions, 1975 to 2009, that you did, I guess, about a year ago.
The book came out actually on December 7th
Uh huh.
of last year,
Right.
and it came out in hardcover, like a coffee table style book, and it it is about 144 pages. Comes in a presentation box with silver lettering with the title and my name, and it comes with four 8 by 12 hard uh, copy prints that you could hang on your wall, and it's about the size of the book.
Cool. Cool.
And it's available only through Weimer Publishing at weimeruk.co.uk.
Right.
And that's the only place that you can buy it online right now. And the book will be available in softcover in the fall on Amazon and in bookstores. And it'll be softcover, and it'll be about 144 pages.
Right. And this is kind of like the whole story of Ronnie James Dio.
Well, no, it's basically my story about how I grow up in the how I grew up as a photographer through my mother,
Right.
who was a photographer in the 40s and 50s, and she had camera equipment when she got married. And when I was about maybe 6 or 7 or so, she started showing me her camera equipment and her photos that she took over the years, and I was very intrigued by it. And then she would show me slides that she shot on the wall, and I was saying like, wow, that looks so cool. I'd like to maybe someday have maybe a couple of my pictures from her camera on the wall of the family or
Right.
my neighborhood. And so, since they were around, I was able to, occasionally, check the camera out, and she showed me how to use it and told me not to cut off anybody's head when he took pictures.
Right.
And so I just took photos, about, and around my house and, my sisters and so forth. And that's how my career kind of started, and back then in the very late 60s. And then music was at the time, the big Woodstock scene and bands like the Beach Boys, Cat Stevens, and Jimi Hendrix, and
Right.
Janis Joplin, and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Jimi Hendrix. A lot of bands I was into because of the records that my friends, older brothers and sisters had, uh, and it was a very interesting time for me.
Right.
And so I would eventually uh, we moved from one town. We were living in the Milford in the late 60s till about 74. And then we moved over to Bergenfield, where by 75, I started to go to concerts with my mom's camera without her knowing about it. And, my parents thought I was up the street, but I was in New York City photographing concerts.
Right.
And this went on for a little while. And then I was also into Deep Purple, but Deep Purple broke up by 75, and I was wondering whatever happened to Richie Blackmore, and it turned out he started a new band called Rainbow
Right.
with Ronnie James Dio as a singer. And I was 13 at the time. They were playing at the Beacon Theater, and I took the camera, my mom's camera, down to the show. I had, enough to buy a ticket and roll a film. Went in, saw the show, and I got pretty close when it came time to photograph in the band. My seat was like in the back of the orchestra, I think, and I moved up, and the lights went out, and I started photographing Richie. But then this voice, was like amazing,
Right.
and Ronnie's blew me away that night. So I became like a fan of his voice,
Right.
and so I, bought a few of the records, and then the next couple of years, I didn't get a chance to see him again, but I was photographing other music. And then when they came around again in the 1980s, Black Sabbath, I went and photographed him again. And then he started his own band, Dio. So I was photographing Dio at places like the Beacon Theater in '83, and then around '84, he started to play the arenas. And I was photographing him here in the New Jersey, New York area, like at the Brendan Byrne Arena and the Nassau Coliseum. And this went on through the '80s, and then I got to meet him in '84, actually, at the arena
Right.
in the Meadowlands. So from there, it just kind of snowballed, and I was getting many photo passes through my magazines.
Right.
When I started working with them in 1980, like '83, I was working with a few magazines, and I was in '82 was when I first got my first published photo in a magazine in Relics.
Right. Yeah.
But it wasn't of Ronnie James Dio. It was of Jorma Kalkin from Hot Tuna.
Wow.
And so I was able to get photo passes for many shows. And when Ronnie's band came around, I would photograph him. And then I ended up meeting him again in upstate New York at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center. I met Wendy then. And then they asked me to, they invited me to a show in it was in New Haven for one of his records. So I went to that show, and I got to meet the band again, and this kind of went on. And then when he was in L.A. at the I think it was the Concrete Marketing Foundations Forum.
Right. Yeah.
I saw them again, and was able to hang out with them for a little bit. Took some photos of him with the Scorpions, and this was just went on until, and then he went back into Black Sabbath, of course, in '92, and photographed him, in New York, and then later on through the years, he would, go back to Dio, and then back to Black Sabbath, but then they were called Heaven and Hell.
Right. Yeah.
And so I was able to photograph them, in several places throughout the world. I went to Vancouver, Canada, to photograph them, and that was actually the first show that they became Heaven and Hell.
Right.
Because Ozzy obviously wasn't going to give them the right to use the name Black Sabbath again.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
So, I went to his first show there as Heaven and Hell, and then one of the big shows in the early 2000s was when they played Radio City Music Hall.
Right. Yeah.
And I was at that show where I was able to photograph him up front, and then in the back I had a ticket, so I just took some pictures from my seat, and those pictures actually made it to Eagle Rock Entertainment was doing a live DVD from Radio City Music Hall, and I was able to photograph them with the photos that I shot from that show, and afterwards they actually made it onto the DVD. And then I photographed them in Europe at a few festivals, and so it was basically just every time they would come to the New York area or New Jersey, or when I ever had a chance to see him outside of the area, when I was able to go to a show, I would. And after he passed on, which was probably a few years later, because I caught his last show at Atlantic City at the House of Blues.
Right.
I thought about doing something with all the years of photographing his shows, and decided to put a book together about it.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's where you get the book that came out now.
Cool. Tell me the camera that you're using in the very beginning.
I used for photographing him. I used my mom's camera. It was a Canon,
Uh huh.
and and then my first camera was a Yashica FX2, I believe,
Right. Yeah.
and I used that camera for about a year or so. Then I was able to get a Nikon. This was like in the late '70s.
Right. Yeah.
I held on to the Yashica camera until around I think it was about '84, '85
Right.
when Megadeth came around, and I ran into Chris Poland backstage at Lemoore in Brooklyn,
Right.
and he wanted to do a trade with me.
Uh
He
huh.
wanted to trade me a guitar for my camera that my father bought me
Right. Yeah.
back in the late '70s,
Wow.
and we added a couple other things, and I ended up getting a uh, a BC Rich endorsed guitar
Uh huh.
along with I think it was a case um, from Chris, and I ended up giving him my camera uh, that my dad bought me,
Wow.
and I also gave him like a leather jacket that I was wearing
Wow.
to kind of seal the deal.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what happened to my camera back then.
Wow.
But of course, I was able to acquire a few other Nikon cameras through the course of time,
Right.
and then of course now, in the last 15 years or more, I've been shooting with digital cameras,
Right.
Nikon, of course.
Right. Um, how much of a difference, is the quality compared to film?
There's a big difference
Uh huh.
because the quality of the digital camera, is very high tech. So there's, you know, more sharpness
Uh huh.
in the digital. I mean, but if you're a good photographer, you can get really quality, sharp shots if you knew what you were doing with print film and slide film,
Right.
which I was able to do because if it wasn't for my training when I was a kid
Right.
and then doing it all on my own afterwards, and trial and error, you just learn how to focus in on your subject and try to capture the most unique photos to please yourself and possibly other people.
Right.
And that's what I would do. And I would try to get situations that you wouldn't normally see,
Uh
in
huh.
maybe magazines, and that kind of helped me kind of stand out in the music photography business when it came to selling photos to magazines, because I've been selling photos to magazines and books and TV shows and other outlets since like the early '80s.
Right. Yeah.
And so right now I'm in my 44th year of photographing music,
Wow.
and still having a great time at it,
Cool. Cool. What
and
what's
being able to flourish in the business.
what's some of the bands that you recently photographed?
Well, like in the last few months, I photographed Leonard Skinner, Kiss, Judas Priest with Uriah Heep.
Mhm.
And I did like who else did I do? I did like a couple local bands, and so I'm waiting maybe to photograph Iron Maiden,
Uh huh.
hopefully in the next month or so,
Right.
and I might. I was thinking about doing. I wanted to do Brian Wilson actually, but he just canceled his tour.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
And there's this festival coming up that I got hired to do in on June 29th up in Wappingers Falls, New York. It's called Tailwinds Festival,
Wow.
and it has bands like Jeff Tate's Queensryche Show, Sass Jordan, Chris Robinson and the Brotherhood, Blackstone Cherry,
Right.
King's X. So it's a really cool lineup. So I actually got hired as the photographer for that festival.
That's cool. Do
Yeah.
most of the places contact you?
No, well, a lot of times it's either myself contacting the magazines to let them know what's going on, or if there's something that they're interested in me photographing, they'll let me know.
Right.
And I don't really work with bands, any major bands closely, like where they call me up and we'll get together
Right.
and I'll go traveling somewhere to photograph. For some reason, I kind of shied away from it and just kind of worked with them through the publications
Right. Yeah.
that hire me each time.
Right. Right. Wow. What's the most difficult band that you ever photographed?
Uh, you mean
Like like
like
like presence on
it's,
stage, like they won't, you can't get a good shot of them because they're moving so much or whatever.
well, I've been because the cameras are more high tech, and even back in the day, uh, I just learned how to capture people moving around quickly.
Right.
And it's a very tough situation. You have to be you have to find the right spot, and you have to know what you're doing with your camera in order to capture those moments, even when the lighting is low, or the people are jumping around,
Right.
and there's a lot of chaos going on. Sometimes it's good to capture the chaos, like in a wide-angle photo.
Right. Yeah.
People diving off a stage, or even close-ups, depending on what the situation is. It really varies from show to show.
Right.
But when you go to like a show like Kiss, for instance, it's good to get like some nice wide angle photos of the whole stage, and then get some full full body photos of the band because of their the
Right.
boots that they wear up to the top of their heads, because they're in these great outfits and makeup. And then you got some bands that you might want to get some tighter shots on, or if they're the kind that like to jump in the air during their show, you kind of do your homework and wait for those moments to happen.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
Well.
so you gotta know what you're doing. And I mean, nowadays, like with the digital cameras, there's more technology to help your situation in capturing moments that
Right.
you might not be able to capture, or wouldn't see it coming
Right.
years ago.
Right.
Because you have like a little, you can basically look behind. You have a monitor on the back of your camera,
Right. Yeah.
so you can kind of watch the show and photograph when you see the moments coming.
Right. Right. So what would you say was the biggest highlight so far of your career?
One of my biggest highlights, I believe, was Live Aid in
Yeah. Wow.
1985
That was a great
at,
show.
at the yeah at the JFK Stadium in Philadelphia. That
Right.
had probably it was the longest day, a one day I've ever photographed, and it was a show that I didn't have a pass for
Right.
because I was working with Circus. There was one of the magazines I was working with was Circus Magazine,
Right.
and for some reason they messed up and couldn't get me a pass. And I'm like, this is like the biggest show ever,
Right. Yeah.
since like Woodstock for me.
Right.
And so I said, well, I have to go. So I ended up getting a couple of my friends and my sister. We took my friend's van, went down to the stadium the night before.
Right.
We were able to buy some tickets through a scalper, and I stayed in front of the door, one of the many doors that led into the stadium.
Right.
Had my camera in a milk crate, and I ended up racing down to the front of the stage when the doors opened, and shot the entire show right from the front of the barricade. And back then, for that kind of a show, people were bringing in, cameras, binocular, everything,
Right.
anything they do can get a closer look of the bands that played on stage. So they didn't really care. They just
Right.
wanted to get, everybody in there, and if people brought stuff, then they, most of people were able to bring in something,
Right. Yeah.
and I just say was able to. get some incredible photos of bands that I loved for years. And it was quite a variety of bands too, from Run DMC to the Beach Boys to Priest, Ozzy, Black Sabbath,
Right.
Duran Duran, um, it was Madonna.
Mhm.
It
Wow.
was crazy. It was
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
In fact, I found a few photos of myself online
Oh yeah.
in the front of the crowd. Yeah, because I used to have jet black hair. I used to stand up,
Right.
and so I could just pick myself right out when I look online and see some of the photographs that other photographers take
Right. Yeah.
uh, from where their vantage points were.
Cool. Cool. Is there anything you want to accomplish yet?
Well, being an author was a big accomplishment,
Right.
and being able to bring out my own book on one of the greatest singers in rock and roll,
True.
and and I actually signed 3 book contracts last year.
Cool.
So that's a huge accomplishment for me because I just planned to be a photographer most of my life, but then things happened and it kind of pushed me into becoming an author. And what a better way to do an entire book on, one of the greatest singers of rock and roll.
Right.
And I'm glad I was able to photograph Ronnie from 1975 to 2009, capturing his first show in the United States as Rainbow. Because the night before, his first show ever was in Canada with Rainbow.
Right.
And then I was able to photograph his first show, when they became Heaven and Hell. And then I was able to photograph his very last show
Right.
in
Yeah.
Atlantic City, and who knew that was going to be it.
Wow.
And then within a year later, he passed away. So it's a beautiful book. I've been getting a lot of great reviews in Europe, in England, and been doing some here in the United States. So I hope everyone really enjoys it and goes out and buy a copy of it, either online or when it comes out in the bookstores in September, and they could also buy it on Amazon in September when
Wow.
it comes out.
Wow.
That way.
Cool. Cool. Well.
Yeah.
Well.
So.
Congratulations on your book, and
Oh, thank you.
you've been a friend a long time, and it's
Right.
just great talking to you. And any way I could help out, just let me know. And
Oh well, yeah.
you
This
know,
is this is a perfect way.
yeah.
And I have other projects, other books going to be coming out soon. So you might hear more from me. And I love your site. I
Thank
go
you.
to check it out, and I wish we could see each other more often. Sometimes in the photo pit.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Um, and by the way, do you still photograph?
Yes, I do.
You do some shows recently. Did you? Were you to go down to? You went down south or something, or you were
Uh,
going somewhere
I just keep
for a
on going.
festival?
I go all over the place, wherever I can go, whenever I could get time off.
Good.
You know.
If you ever get the opportunity, go to Europe.
Cool.
There's some great festivals that they have over there,
Right. Yeah.
and that's where I caught Ronnie several times over in Sweden and Belgium, and they put on some amazing 3-day festivals over there.
Cool. Cool. Cool.
Yeah, it's worth going just to experience the camp out with everybody. I mean, some people will, do the hotel thing, but
Right.
if you really want to get the true festival atmosphere, you get a tent and you bring it out there in the middle of the field where they put everybody,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's quite an experience.
Cool. Cool. Cool.
And I'm glad I was able to show some of the live photos and where my vantage points were
Right. Yeah.
to photograph Ronnie
Wow.
in the book.
Yep. Yep.
That ended up in the book.
Some great
Yeah.
pictures, man. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you. How did you like the book
I did. I
overall?
loved looking at the pictures. You know.
Cool.
I
Cool. Yeah,
really
my
did.
story's very interesting too.
Yes, I did. I read
You
that too.
know.
You know.
So
So
yeah. So there's a lot of little twists and turns there.
cool. Cool. Well, Frank, thanks a lot. When the next book comes out, we'll talk again.
You got it.
Thanks a lot, man. Bye bye.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.